Hello, welcome back to Picture Perfect Greek. Today I have a news item for you. I know that you like it. You told me before that you enjoy these news items, and this was inspired by real news. I try to not make up completely, news. I rephrase them, I write them myself so that they are suitable for you, but it begins with real news, and recently there was a taxi strike in Athens. And taxi strikes have existed in Athens for as long as I'm alive. So it's not going to go out of fashion, the vocabulary here. But I think it's interesting vocabulary because it talks about strike, about politics, about unions, all these kinds of things that are advanced vocabulary that you don't normally find in Greek learning books. So here we go. We have first the Greek only paragraph. I will read it to you in Greek. Try to see how much you can understand. And after that, we will go through it word by word and we'll translate it. And then you will learn the words that you need. Let's go. Την Τρίτη, μία μεγάλη πομπή από οδηγούς ταξί προκάλεσε αναστάτωση στο κέντρο της Αθήνας. Χρησιμοποιώντας δυνατές κόρνες και φωτοβολίδες, οι διαδηλωτές σηματοδότησαν την αρχή μιας 48ωρης απεργίας. Οι οδηγοί αντιδρούν ενάντια σε ένα νέο κυβερνητικό κανόνα σχετικά με τα ηλεκτρικά οχήματα. Το κράτος απαιτεί ότι κάθε νέο ταξί με άδεια από το 2026 πρέπει να είναι ηλεκτρικό. Ωστόσο, τα συνδικάτα υποστηρίζουν ότι το δίκαιο φόρτισης δεν είναι ακόμα επαρκές. Ζητούν μία παράταση της προθεσμίας μέχρι το 2035. Επιπλέον, ζητούν φορολογικές ελαφρύνσεις και άδεια να χρησιμοποιούν τις λωρίδες λεωφορείων. Παρόμοιες διαδηλώσεις έλαβαν χώρα στη Θεσσαλονίκη και άλλες περιοχές. Τα συνδικάτα απειλούν να συνεχίσουν με καθημερινές διαμαρτυρίες αν τα αιτήματά τους δεν ικανοποιηθούν. Well, that's it. This was difficult, I know. This is political text, this is newspaper speak. So now let's go and try to understand all of it word by word. Την Τρίτη, μία μεγάλη πομπή από οδηγούς ταξί προκάλεσε αναστάτωση στο κέντρο της Αθήνας. Την Τρίτη, on Tuesday. This is easy in Greek, differently from what it is in English or in other North European languages. The Greeks, like the Chinese, just count the days. So, Deftera is the second, Triti is the third, Tetarte is the fourth, Pempti the fifth. Okay, so far it's counting. Paraskevi means preparation. So it's the preparation for the Sabbath, the Jewish day of rest. And it's interesting that you have the Jewish day of rest here, not the Christian day of rest, which is the Sunday. So historically, I don't know exactly how this came about, but the Greeks have their preparation for the Sabbato, which is the Sabbath, of course, right? It's the same word. And then you have the Sabbato, which is the day of rest in Jewish religion, and then you have the day of the Lord, Kyriaki. And this comes from Kyrios, which is the Lord, the man, sir, right? When you meet someone on the street, you say Kyrie Yanni, Mr. Yannis. Okay, την Τρίτη. Μία μεγάλη πομπή. A big convoy. A πομπή is the, not the convoy directly in terms of vehicles. It's also that, but you wouldn't say a convoy of people, while originally Pombi is meant for people. Pombí, like pombos, which is the transmitter, the radio transmitter, comes from pembo, ek pembo, which means to send out. And so a pombí is a delegation. It's a group of people you are sending out to do something. So normally it would be pretty exactly a delegation, normally some political or some diplomatic delegation that goes out to negotiate with an enemy, for example, when you are in a war situation, or you send them out to negotiate with a business, right? So a pombí, or a religious pombí, right, is a delegation of priests, perhaps, who walk out in file with their different tools they use there, right? Flags and whatever they have, religious stuff, to do some kind of religious ritual, to perform some kind of religious ritual. So this is a pombí. And so it's more of a delegation than a convoy. And you see this also here because it says a large convoy of taxi drivers, right? You can say a convoy of taxis, but you cannot say a convoy of taxi drivers. So this translation is not particularly good. So on Tuesday, I leave it in anyway. Perhaps you wonder, why do I leave all these bad translations in there when I know how to translate it better? The point is, I think that there is benefit in this, in you seeing how the translation can be wrong and how you can correct it. So, for example, you wouldn't know the difference between convoy and pombí if I had not just now given you the bad translation first. So the bad translations mostly are machine translations. It's Google Translate, it's ChatGPT, which I use to make these first translations, and then I discuss them with you. And so you see, or if it's literary text, then I get the translation from the internet, and then I discuss it with you so you can see why the translation is bad, and perhaps you can understand the small differences between words and which are better and which are worse. So in this case, convoy, not a good translation. Pombí is a delegation. Μία μεγάλη πομπή από οδηγούς ταξί, from taxi drivers. Taxi, of course, is the taxi. Προκάλεσε αναστάτωση. Προκαλώ is to cause in this context. Αναστάτωση. Anastatosi is the commotion, the confusion, people running around, not knowing what's happening, right? This is anastatosi. And this delegation of taxi drivers caused the commotion στο κέντρο της Αθήνας, in the center of Athens. Χρησιμοποιώντας δυνατές κόρνες και φωτοβολίδες. Χρησιμοποιώντας, using. Χρησιμοποιώ is to use, χρήσιμο is useful, and ποιο is where poetry comes from, to make something, to create something. Χρησιμοποιώ is to create something useful, or to make something useful that was not useful before, right? So to use. Χρησιμοποιώντας, using, that's this form, using, right? Χρησιμοποιώντας, δυνατές, strong, δύναμη is the strength, is the power, is the force. Δυνατές κόρνες. Corna, of course, is an Italian word, probably meaning a horn. And flares, φωτοβολίδες. This again is a nice word. Phos, photo is the phos, is the light, and volida is the projectile, is the thing that you shoot off. So these are light projectiles, right? They are flares. The protesters, οι διαδηλωτές. But it has to be a protester who is on the streets. A διαδηλωτής is not somebody who silently protests. So I protest this change in my office rules by, not working with my full power today. This is not a διαδηλωτής. Διαδηλωτής is somebody who picks up a sign, and goes on the streets to shout for a cause. Οι διαδηλωτές σηματοδότησαν. Σήμα is the sign again, and δότησαν comes from δίνω, giving a sign. So they marked. To mark something is to give a sign of something, to publicly signpost something. And what was it? Την αρχή μίας, the beginning of, 48 ώρες, 48 hour. 48 ώρες, 48 ώρο, 48 of course, 48, and ώρα is the hour. Απεργία, απεργία is the strike. And απεργία again comes from apo, from, and ergo, which is the work that you are doing. You know, there are all sorts of physical quantities called something with ergo, which all comes from work, doing work. Ergon is also often called a cinema movie, is an ergo, because it's an artistic work. And you can generally say it of artistic works, a book is an ergo logotechnias. So it's a product of work. And apo, ergia, means from work, away from work, distanced from work, right? So this is the strike. So let's go on. Οι οδηγοί αντιδρούν, the drivers, αντιδρούν, they are reacting. And this is again the same meaning as reacting. Anti means opposite, to be opposed, and drasi is the action. This is where drama comes from, because drama is an action on the stage. And αντιδρώ means to counteract, to react. Enandia means opposite, or in this case against, σε έναν νέο, to one new, κυβερνητικό κανόνα. Κυβέρνηση is the government. This is where cybernetics also comes from. Cybernetics is the science of governance, of governing formal systems, or any systems that you can describe. And so κυβέρνηση is the government, κυβερνητικό is the governmental or government-related, κανόνα. And κανόνα is the rule. Canon perhaps is the ecclesiastical rule, the rule of the church. And so there is the church canon, and often you use canon also for things that are the standard. There's a Star Trek canon, which are those episodes of Star Trek that belong to the standard Star Trek. And then there are non-canonized things that are additional materials, perhaps novels and so on, written by other people. They are not part of the core Star Trek. So canon means generally what is officially declared to be the normal thing, because it's the rule, it's following the rule, it's following the law. And kanonas, more generally, is just a rule. So you can have kanonas at work about how to use the coffee machine, or you can have kanonas in school to put your mobile phone away when the teacher is speaking, all kinds of things. These are all kanones, rules. So there's a new government rule. This does not necessarily mean a law. A law would be a nomos. So this is not a nomos, it's just a rule, it's a kanonas. Σχετικά με, σχέση is the relationship. So you can say, I am in a relationship with Mary. Έχω μια σχέση με την Maria. There is a relation between this and that physical number, between, force and momentum. So this is a σχέση again, right? A relationship between, or a relation between two magnitudes in physics. And here σχετικά means related with or regarding. Τα ηλεκτρικά οχήματα. Ηλεκτρικά, electric, οχήματα, vehicles. Το κράτος απαιτεί. Το κράτος, the state, απαιτεί, demands. Απαιτώ is to demand, the same word, exactly the same meaning. And you can also use it in your private life. Απαιτώ, you can demand things from your children, you can demand things from your family. It's pretty strong, right? Like demand. So I cannot demand my coffee in the morning. This would be a little offensive. But I can demand that my children flush the toilet, right? So in this sense, απαιτώ is demand. Ότι, that, κάθε νέο ταξί. Κάθε means every, νέο, new, taxi. Με άδεια από το 2026, with άδεια, permission, permit, or license in this case, right? So permission, permit, license, these are all άδεια. Άδεια also means empty. So this is interesting because it's not related, right? Or I don't know how it would be related, but άδεια is the permission, is the permit, and adios means empty. So, every new taxi with a permit, with a license, από το 2026 from 2026 must be electric. Πρέπει να είναι ηλεκτρικό. Ωστόσο, however, ωστόσο means however, τα συνδικάτα, the union, sindicato is the union. This is where syndicalism comes from, right? The activity of engaging in work unions. So it's not a union in the sense of two things uniting. So if I have a union with my wife, or if two companies form a union in order to pursue some common commercial goals, right, then these are not syndicata. So a syndicata is specifically a workers' union. It's a thing where workers go together in order to defend their interests against the employers. So the unions, τα συνδικάτα, υποστηρίζουν. They argue. Υποστηρίζω is a little different from argue. In this case, it does mean argue, but more generally, it means to support. Υπό is under, and stirizo is literally to support something. So when, the roof is falling on my head and I put my arm up to hold it so that it doesn't fall down, then I am υποστηρίζω. I'm holding it up from below, υπό, right? Under. Under holding up is υποστηρίζω. So the unions argue. In this case, it does mean argue, but I can use it for other kinds of support. So I can say, I support my argument with these facts. Or I can say, even literally, you could also say stirizo, το κτίριο, για να μην πέσει. I am supporting this house so that it doesn't fall down. Okay, so υποστηρίζω is support, mostly with arguments, and so in this case it does mean argue. Ότι το δίκτυο φόρτισης, that δίκτυο is the network, διαδίκτυο is the internet, dia means between, right? So διαδίκτυο, internet, network, right? Το δίκτυο, the network, φόρτισης, charging network. Φορτίζω is to charge, it's also to load. A φορτηγό is a truck. So in this case, φόρτιση means to load electricity onto your device, right? Onto your car in this case. So the network for loading, literally, but it means charging network. Then είναι ακόμα is not yet, επαρκές, sufficient. Επαρκής is sufficient. Ζητούν μία παράταση. Ζητούν, they are asking. Ζητώ means to ask or to look for. So ζητώ means to be looking for something. Καταζητώ, καταζητώ, very much looking. Κατά means very much is an amplifier, right? So καταζητώ means to be looking for a criminal, to be searching for a criminal. Καταζητώ τον κλέφτη, καταζητώ τον δολοφόνο. I'm looking for the murderer, I'm looking for the thief. So ζητούν, they are looking for, or they request, φορολογικές ελαφρύνσεις. Now, φορολογία is the tax, foros is the tax, and logos, logia, is always this suffix you use for sciences, right? So you have biology, biologia, geology, geologia, the earth science, the life science, and this is forologia. It's the tax, science, but it just means taxes. Tax relief, elafrensis, and this comes from elafri, which means light, as opposed to vari, which is heavy. So a lightening, an unburdening of taxation. Και άδεια and permission, again, permission, permit, άδεια, να χρησιμοποιούν, to use, we talked about this already, τις λωρίδες λεωφορείων. A lorida is a strip of something. I can take my t-shirt. If I have an injury, let's say, on my leg and I'm hiking, I may take my t-shirt and cut it into lorides, into strips of fabric that then I can wrap around my injured leg. So this is a lorida, literally, is a long strip of something. And when we talk about streets, then a lorida is a lane of the street. And a lorida leophorion is a bus. Lane and leophorio comes from Laos, which is the population, and phero, phorio, means to carry or to bring. So it's a population bringer or population carrier, and this is the name for bus, leoforio. So they request tax relief and permission to use the bus lanes. Παρόμοιες διαδηλώσεις, παρόμοιο means similar, όμοιο means similar itself, κάτι είναι όμοιο με κάτι άλλο, something is similar to something else, and παρόμοιες means again similar, similar to something else. Similar διαδηλώσεις, we talked about this already, right? Demonstrations. Διαδηλωτής, we said, is the person who is going out on a demonstration, and διαδήλωση then is the demonstration. And this contains dia, through, like the διαδίκτυο, the internet. Dia means between or through, and δήλωση is a statement. So you can also have a φορολογική δήλωση, a tax statement, which is what you do every year when you have to pay your taxes. You give a tax statement to the government which says how much you earned. And there are other δηλώσεις. So in court, for example, you might be asked to certify something, and then you make a δήλωση, a statement, an official statement. So δήλωση is always a kind of official statement. And διαδήλωση is making a statement in public, right? So a demonstration, right? You go make a statement, which is actually the same like demonstration, right? To demonstrate something also means to make a statement, to show that something is true in public, right? Έλαβαν χώρα. Έλαβαν χώρα means to take place. This is literally the same expression, right? Έλαβαν, λάβω, λαβαίνω is to take and to receive. So took, received. Χώρα, χώρος is the place. Έλαβαν χώρα, took place στην Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki is the second biggest city in Greece, και σε άλλες περιοχές. Και σε άλλες and in other περιοχές, regions. Περιοχή, η περιοχή is the region. Τα συνδικάτα, again, the unions, απειλούν. Απειλώ is to threaten. And again, this is a very common word, απειλώ. You can say this for all kinds of threats. I threaten you to do something, or my colleague threatened me that he will withdraw his support for my project. Something like this, right? So it's threatening in all different ways. It can be a threat to life. It can be a threat of, withdrawing support for some project. And in this case, the unions threaten να συνεχίσουν, to continue. Συνεχίζω is I continue, again, very common word. Συνεχίζω, I continue to do something. Καλή συνέχεια is a wish when you leave someone and you don't threaten them, but you wish them to have a good time continuing to do what they are doing. So you go to a group of people drinking coffee, you drink with them for a while, then you have to leave to go back to your work and say καλή συνέχεια. Have a good continuation of what you are doing, in this case of your coffee drinking. So the unions threaten to continue με καθημερινές. Καθημερινές, κάθε means all, and ημέρα is the day, καθημερινές, every day, daily. Διαμαρτυρίες, protests. A martyr in the church is somebody who has been killed for his faith. These are the people who in the early centuries of the church, were burned or killed for their faith. And these are called martyrs, right? They are normally made saints after some time. And a martyr is somebody who dies in pursuit of his faith, right? And this is also in Greek, the martyras, and this comes from martyria, and martyria is the confession or the declaration. So you have a martyras, for example, also in court. A martyras in court is a witness because they confess or they declare what they witnessed. So the martyria is a public declaration or a public statement that you make. And so it means protest, right? But it's interesting because this martyr has these different sides to the word, right, the different meanings, which can range from a religious martyr, to a witness in court. They are all martyrs because they give a martyria, which is a confession also, but also just a statement that something is true. An, if, ta etimatatus, their demands. Etima is the demand, and this is the same word root as in appeto. We talked about appeto earlier. I demand something, I request something, but a little stronger, right? I demand something. Appeto, and the eto in appeto is the same as in etimata. So the etima is the, in this case, the demand. Be careful how to write things, right? Etima with alpha, iota, and eta is the demand, while if I say etima with epsilon and omicron iota, means something is ready, right? The tiropitas are ready, tiropitas in etimis. So you have to be careful here. Some words sound the same or they sound similar, but they are written very differently and mean very different things. So ta etimatatus, they are demands, then ikanopithon, they are not satisfied. And this, again, this piece is full of interesting words, right? Ikanos is able. Anikanos is unable. So ikanos means satisfactory, able. And anikanos is unable. So if I tell my children to clean the kitchen, perhaps they're unable and they break all the dishes. And then I say, you are anikanos. You are unable to do this job. I should never have, asked you to clean the kitchen. So anikanos means somebody is not able to do something. Ikanos is something is able, something is satisfactory. And pio, again, is where poema comes from, poem, or it also means to make. And so to make something satisfactory, ikanopio. The demands are not satisfied, then ikanopiunde, then tha ikanopithon. And this is it. I hope you learned lots of interesting words. And not only, you see, it's not only about the strikes and the politics of taxi drivers, it's also very much about the history of language, like we always do. And I know you enjoy it. I enjoy it too. And so thank you for being here. And we will talk again next time. I let the vocabulary run through this here for a moment. And the same document with all the text and all the vocabulary lists you will find on my Substack. Thank you, and see you again in the next video. Bye-bye.